Hi, Igor.
Hello.
Since you are so good at working with the limitation of words, I have a related question. So why don't we take that further? Is soul the same as spirit, or is there a difference between soul and spirit?
None whatsoever. There's no difference, even if it may seem so. Is the light of the sun different from the sun? Can we separate? No, we cannot. Even one wave of light is not separate from the sun, right? No one single wave, not one single ray, not one single wave of light is separate from what is at the source of that light. In exactly the same way, the soul is not separate from the source of its luminosity.
So does the soul pick up some of the individual personality in this life? Because the spirit doesn't. The spirit is everything and everywhere. It's all there is. Is there a difference in that sense? Because usually, in my experience, when we say soul, we are talking about individual, personal soul. So does that soul, because all of a sudden has become personal or individual, does it have characteristics that are not real? So does it have this unreal face added to what it really is? Or this is again something we make up because it's easier for us to understand it that way. So I just want to kind of get deeper into the question of soul and spirit. Thank you.
Are you staying over for the immersion?
Yes, I am. Of
Okay,
course.
good. Because you might get enlightened, and I want to make sure, because otherwise I'll keep and answer it on the last day.
I just want to keep you busy.
It's only a matter of perspective, and that, of course, makes the whole world of difference. It's a matter of perspective. That, what we call individuality, has no existence of its own and never had. Therefore, of course, with regard to questions like this, we are grateful that there are indeed spiritual traditions that dealt with this aspect with tremendous clarity, with tremendous insights. And these insights have been re-experienced, as it were, validated. So tradition is not just a set of doctrines we agreed upon and carried them. No, they have to be lived, experienced over and validated through direct partaking. So this, what now the question contains, and it's a legitimate question of if soul and spirit is indeed one, how can there be that spirit is that which pure transcendence, eminence itself, and yet there is this direct, undeniable experience of uniqueness of being me, uniqueness of being who I know myself to be, and I'm looking out of that predicament. That's what spiritual work in a nutshell, if we are to speak of it like, hardcore stuff. Because, of course, spiritual work can be applied and on so many levels and for so many different reasons. But if we are to speak of that perspective, and that question presupposes that ultimate perspective to reconcile this, then all that boils down simply to the question of perspective. And that's all. So in other words, individuality never even came in. There's no one out there lives as an individual. You might remember me speaking of it as awareness. Shiva wants to behold its magnificence through as many ways as his infinite will, infinite knowledge, and infinite power of action affords him to, which pretty much is unlimited. So that's what we're speaking of. Every single one of us has never came here in any way other than my own self, myself. And I behold my life, magnificence of this being, on the account of that luminosity, which is not a borrowed luminosity. It's a luminosity of my own, and it shines forth as everything, including that what seemingly gives me temporal misperception of somehow being eclipsed from the light of my own. So, matter of perception, nothing more, nothing less. And with that, it creates that perspective. At that point of where we perceive our individuality, it seems as if it's such a perfect or perfectly encapsulated predicament of act of separation. But none of that is taking place at the point where everything is illumined. So therefore, spiritual work, real spiritual work, is not a conceptual framework of reshuffling and analyzing, scrutinizing, but to experience that inner sweeping experience of withdrawal, so that it completely reverses the perspective. And the reversal of that perspective, it's all there is. You may live forever just once having that sweeping experience, and the whole life thereafter will be the reverberance of this one experience, because it doesn't even need to be, because it will pulverize. Not everyone is equipped with a nervous system to vibrate with such frequency so as to behold oneself as pure light. Only few beings can, and there's no need for that either. So therefore, the perspective that I chose to speak from is so unapologetic about this. The tantric perspective, and in particular here we speak of the perspectives present in the teachings of Kashmir Shaivism, are notoriously clear about this. So, there.
So in other words, the separation disappears when the oneness takes place, when one is in that place of awareness, enlightenment.
Well, you see that you're asking if that separation disappears as permanent experience.
No.
You're asking as...
No, in that moment, when you join, the separation is no longer there because you are one.
It's not even, you see that again, that experience of having individual soul is on the account of uniqueness. uniqueness, precisely here, uniqueness, which is uniquely at once our own and not our own. This is also how one is advised to work, because this is now we're dealing, I invite you to look at it from the point of view of energy, from the point of view of resonance that a certain emphasis creates. On one hand, nothing here in myself that is mine. And at the same time, that is my undeniable experience. So it is and it is not at once, as the poets, sages will exclaim. Because that's the uniqueness, that's the paradox. It's the aperture. Individuality, aka ego, can be spoken of as predicament which is simply impossible to overcome, and those who want to overcome it too badly may overcome it in undesirable manner, because nobody wants to have float some in states of depersonalization, because that does not abound for a lack of ego. But the reconciliation here is in the sense of that aperture, because individuality on the onset is not spoken in terms of my individuality. It is already assigned to the divine. You see? So one already delegates oneself to that light what illumines every and any seeming imperfection that I may be baffled or bounce against. And the one's work begins from there, not culminates in that. And then there will be many experiences of that expansion and contraction, as many as it need to be. In meditation, we leave it all behind. And we leave it all behind anyway in a deep sleep. What's the big deal? Individuality, we rest from ourselves periodically because it's impossible. It's very tiring to be ourselves. So we're kind of like, okay, I'm tired to be myself. Jump into bed or on a bench, wherever, right? And no longer I'm myself, you know. But in a spiritual work, there is this constancy and an emphatic, if you will, intention. And that is what's happening. And in meditation, it becomes more and more subtle, more and more profound. We can, of course, speak about this in terms of what's happened at the subtle level, at the subtle plane, at the level of the working of energies, at the level of the working of the pranas, how the prana works, right? Because everything is, we cannot separate any neurophysiological activity here outside of the movement of prana. So therefore, there's an interesting hint here now, completely, if you will, new to some of you maybe. We can even speak of the experience of that contraction of being myself and nothing else on the account of that pranic movement. For example, some of you may not be aware, but just not to go there, it's not our place here tonight, but there are 5 major pranas operating always, 5 major pranas. Those of you who have been at the retreats know we speak about it always. And there is a particular quality of prana known as vyana, which is known as all-pervasive. This all-pervasive quality of prana, making sure that we have complete and entire experience of totality of our body. And if we touch our toe, it is on the account of the vyana functioning that the consciousness immediately, if you will, creates a coherent picture. No, just a light touch of the feather somewhere running through your toes will signals electrical responses, but this is a physiological perspective. What happens at the level of energy is the vyana in action. right? There are other pranic movements. But Vyana is all pervasive. It's everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. The whole cellular structure is upheld by that. But the experience in meditation, when we go beyond the confinements of the body, is when that prana takes over the rising life force, which takes us outside and makes us feel as if we are spread across the universe. It makes us feel as we are beyond these parameters. And that is Vyana, which is now on the account of experiencing this all-pervasiveness. You see? This local experience being bound by the body is on the account of working of the pranic flows. Likewise, something else happens, again on the account of being taken out of it. You see? So this is yet an additional perspective to understand that this contraction and expansion can be experienced in so many different ways, in myriad of ways. And this always, of course, leaves some sediment in a good sense. It leaves sediment. Wherever we expand it, it's not for nothing. So with the next contraction, there is the reverberance of that memory of expansion. When that becomes constant, amidst the tightest contraction, there are frequency and vibrations of expansion. Reverse is also true, but let's leave it at that for the time being. Mm-hmm.